Jayvardy.
Jayvardy.
This Jayvardy.
Jayvardy. Thank you, Jayvardy.
Jayvardy.
Jayvardy. Oh, Jayvardy. Oh my gosh.
Hello everyone, welcome to this. This is going to be my WrestleMania 42 fantasy card. That's right, we're still pretty much a year away from WrestleMania, a little bit less than a year away from WrestleMania 42, but I'm already thinking ahead. I'm already thinking nearly a year ahead for what the match card for WrestleMania 42 could be. And this is what WWE should be doing. Realistically, the WWE should have storylines and matches planned nearly a year in advance for WrestleMania every single year, because some matches, including, most likely the main event matches and the big money matches of the card, should have, 6 months to a year worth of build up to them. We just finished a WrestleMania where none of the matches had a year's worth of build up to them. Maybe you could argue the CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, but that wasn't really a year build up for even that. They have a lot of history together, but that wasn't that match specifically was not built up for a year. But the point is that you should know, if you're the WWE, what your WrestleMania looks like. I would say at least have the drawing board of it ready a year in advance and pretty much almost locked up 6 months in advance. Like from SummerSlam onward, you should know what your WrestleMania card's going to be. Now, obviously, there's going to be things like injuries that are going to happen that are going to make certain wrestlers not available. You're going to have older stars and like part-time stars or stars that you want to bring into the company who may not sign, and that can make it problematic to make matches if you had them in your plans. You'll sign new young stars or bring up young stars from your developmentals who will get over quickly and will be, worthy of a WrestleMania match. Championships will change hands. Feuds between wrestlers will die out or build up all of a sudden. Like lots of things can happen in a year to change your plans, but you should know from a year out what the foundation and idea of WrestleMania is going to be. And I would say from SummerSlam onwards, you should be full steam ahead, making sure your main matches are, the feuds are beginning on TV and you're building up that build up towards WrestleMania. And we just had a WrestleMania pass, WrestleMania 41, that didn't have this. So that's why I'm doing this video early, because I'm looking at what the roster is and what the roster could be realistically. I don't have a Stone Cold Steve Austin match on this card, even though he wrestled only a few years ago. I don't have The Undertaker on this card, even though he made an appearance at WrestleMania 40. I don't have a bunch of stars from AEW or TNA on this card. I don't have a bunch of wrestlers from Japan on this card, although I do have one wrestler from Japan on this card. I'm trying to make it realistic. And I don't have a bunch of crazy past names coming on either. I do have a couple past names coming on here, but again, I want this match card to feel realistic and feel believable of what WrestleMania could be. So that was my goal, to look at what the roster currently is and what the roster could be and what the championships could look like a year from now, and put together the best possible card I could put together while keeping it realistic. We just had this past WrestleMania where a lot of the matches did not feel like WrestleMania matches. I put a lot of thought into this on trying to make every single match feel like a WrestleMania match. I have 16 matches in total, 8 for night 1 and 8 for night 2. And my goal was to make every single match feel like it's a WrestleMania match. Now I'm going to quickly go over them all. I'm not going to dive into what the potential storylines could be. I might throw out some ideas here or there what the storylines could be in the matches, but a lot of these matches, the story kind of writes themselves. And if I were to give my fantasy storyline for every single one of these matches in this video would be like 2 hours long. Not that I mind doing videos that long, but I want to try to make this video quicker and more to the point and just putting out the match card. So we're going to dive into this, and I do have storyline ideas for each of these matches in my head, and if this card becomes a really popular card, a really popular fantasy card, this video gets a lot of views. Possibly I will do a follow-up video where I talk about storylines. But for now, let's just get into what the matches look like. Now I'm going to do the match card reveal in order of opening match to closing match from night 1 to night 2. But if I start that right now, a lot of you will see the first match of opening night and be like, oh, this is a stupid card, I'm out. So hear me out. I do think the opening match in night 1 is a WrestleMania worthy match. A lot of you will see it and be kind of shocked that I had that on a WrestleMania match card. So before I shock you with that, I want to say the 6 matches that I'm going to build this WrestleMania around. And that is a women's tag team title match between, you got the champions Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez of Judgment Day versus Roxanne Perez and AJ Lee. A lot of people will say AJ Lee's not in the WWE right now. Look, I fully expect AJ Lee to be back in WWE before WrestleMania, and I'm going to do a SummerSlam fantasy card that it features her on my SummerSlam fantasy card. Realistically, AJ Lee should have been brought back into WWE for last year's WrestleMania, this one that just passed WrestleMania 41. Her and CM Punk should have wrestled Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. The way they used Becky Lynch at WrestleMania was kind of stupid. The triple threat match between Punk, Rollins, and Reigns did not really work out. I had on my fantasy card Punk and AJ versus Seth and Becky. I still think that's the way they should have went. It's not, whatever, that's not the point of this. But I think that match will happen at SummerSlam. I think Punk and AJ will face Becky and Seth at SummerSlam. Punk and Seth might be a little sick of wrestling each other come SummerSlam, but if they get the wives involved, I think it'll reignite their passion of wrestling each other. And I'm talking about in real life, but obviously in storyline, adding the wives together would make the storyline even more interesting. But the point is, I think AJ Lee will be back in WWE before WrestleMania 42. And I have her teaming up with the young upstart Roxanne Perez to take on Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for the women's tag team titles. I have Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. This is a story that writes itself. One of them is going to have to turn heel for this match. And really, a lot of people are going to say it should be Cody that turns heel. I think Cody turning heel, I think it kind of missed their chance by not doing it for the match with John Cena. I don't know if Cody heel turn for next year's WrestleMania will have the same amount of impact, but we shall see. It doesn't really matter which one turns heel, but this is a match again that probably should have happened at this year's WrestleMania, but I guess better late than never, right? But Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton is a big time match that I have for my WrestleMania 42 card. I have Braun Breaker challenging for the WWE Championship, and I have the WWE Championship being around Drew McIntyre at the time. They could even do something interesting where they make this a heel versus heel match, which I think would be really cool. We haven't seen a heel versus heel world title match in WWE for a really long time at WrestleMania. The closest one I would say we've gotten in the last like several years was Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, but Brock Lesnar was kind of a face for that match. But I guess like all 3 of the Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar match you could have argued were heel versus heel for the world title. But anyways, I think Braun Breaker will probably be in the world title picture come WrestleMania next year, and I have him challenging Drew McIntyre for the potential chance of winning his first WWE title at WrestleMania 42. I have CM Punk holding the World Heavyweight Championship heading into WrestleMania 42 and defending against Logan Paul. I think the 2 of them could make magic together in the right storyline. And you have a potential here of doing something really special storyline wise because you can extend this feud off of simply just have like outside of simply just having them go like head to head on the microphone. You could do a lot of cool like skits with these 2. You could do a lot of like filming like cinematic scenes between these 2, outside of the arena. You could do a lot of really special things creatively here. I think the 2 of them would lend themselves great to that. And besides Punk and Paul, they kind of teased something before WrestleMania this past year. I think they're going to have really good chemistry working against one another. and I have that as my World Heavyweight title match. I have Tiffany Stratton defending what I hope is the undisputed women's championship come WrestleMania next year. I don't think we need two women's world titles. I hope that between now and WrestleMania 42, they unify the two women's world championships. You do not need 5 belts in the women's division. So if you're going to have the tag team titles and you're going to have these mid-card intercontinental and US titles, I think you only need one world championship. So I hope that the WWE Women's Championship and the Women's World Championship get unified before WrestleMania 42. And I hope Tiffany walks in as the undisputed champion. And I hope she defends it against Jade Cargill. I'm actually really excited that they're kind of like in a bit of a mini feud already. I think you could build this feud for an entire year up till WrestleMania next year and have Tiffany defend the Women's World Championship against Jade Cargill. I think that would be a huge match. And Jade proved at WrestleMania this year that she's ready for that. And I think Tiffany and Jade will be even bigger stars than they are now come WrestleMania next year. And I see this as a big money match if built properly. And then obviously Roman Reigns versus The Rock. That kind of sells itself, doesn't it? Roman Reigns versus The Rock, that story writes itself. The end of the bloodline at WrestleMania 42. The tribal chief versus the final boss to end the bloodline, and we find out who really is the head of the table, Roman Reigns versus The Rock, in what will be the biggest WrestleMania match since The Rock versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to have 16 matches for my WrestleMania, and I have 8 matches on each night. 8 matches for WrestleMania Saturday, 8 matches for WrestleMania Sunday. Let's go, starting from opening match till main event. 8 matches, WrestleMania Saturday. Here we go. So we're kicking off WrestleMania 42 with an intergender match between Chad Gable and Bianca Belair. I told you you would think that you would think I'm crazy for making this my opening WrestleMania match, but I really think that if done properly, this could be really interesting and really special. Chad Gable has proved he's so diverse with the type of opponents you can give him. He can wrestle basically anybody, and he's going to put in the proper effort storyline wise, no matter who you put him in a feud with. And if they're ever going to do a big intergender match at WrestleMania, I do think, he's the guy that you could do that with. He's safe in the ring. He's going to protect his opponent. And Bianca is large enough size-wise and popularity-wise to pull this match off. So for me, my opening match, intergender match between Chad Gable and Bianca Belair. And I have the WWE United States title on the line, Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio. I couldn't get a picture of Dominic Mysterio with the United States Championship because he hasn't won it yet. So I have Dominic Mysterio entering as the champion. And I know Dominic and Rey have had a bunch of matches already in their career, but Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania next year is probably going to be looking to retire. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a retirement match, but next year is probably Rey Mysterio's last WrestleMania, let's be completely honest. He is getting up there in age, and who better to have his last WrestleMania match than against his son, who he said that's what he wants to do. Let's make it for the United States title. I have Dominic Mysterio winning the U.S. title and entering WrestleMania next year as the champion. He'll defend it against his father and most likely beat his father in what I wouldn't have advertised as Rey Mysterio's last WrestleMania match or last match in WWE at all, but in very likelihood, Dominic Mysterio will beat Rey Mysterio for the United States title next year in what will be Rey Mysterio's last WrestleMania. Then I have an 8-woman ladder match for the WWE Women's Intercontinental Championship. And for those of you who do not know, in the right corner of the screen, that is Miyu Watanabe of Japan. I said I had one wrestler out of Japan in my WrestleMania card. There she is. She's 25 or 26 years old. I can't remember which. I think she's 25. But anyways, by WrestleMania next year, she'll be 26, maybe 27. I don't know when her birthday is, but she's a great wrestler out of Japan, and I have her in this match. alongside Becky Lynch, Zelina Vega, Chelsea Green, Julia, Ivy Nile, Mishin, and Lyra Valkyria. 8 women in an 8-woman ladder match for the WWE Women's Intercontinental Championship. Then I have Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn. These two are probably going to wrestle before WrestleMania next year, but I think this is a match that's a good enough of a match that you put these two in a match together, it's going to be something special. And it doesn't matter. You can wrestle somebody in a year before leading up to WrestleMania and then wrestle them again at WrestleMania. We saw that this year with Jey Uso and Gunther. I'm not a huge fan of them doing that all the time where wrestlers have like wrestle each other a couple times in a year and then face off at WrestleMania again. But that probably could work here because this is going to be a fantastic match. But anyways, Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn I have as a WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 42. I talked about this before. Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. This story writes itself. This is a must-need. This is a match that needs to happen. It's a must-have match at WrestleMania next year. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. The American Nightmare versus the Viper. Mentor versus protege. Multi-generation wrestlers versus each other. This is a huge, huge match. I'm amazed that WWE didn't pull the trigger on this match for SummerSlam last year or WrestleMania 41. But anyways, I have it as a must-have match at WrestleMania 42, Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. Then I have the WWE Championship on the line, Drew McIntyre versus Braun Breaker. Now, you can have Drew turn face for this match. I would not have Braun Breaker as the face for this match, or you could do it heel versus heel, which could be really interesting if they develop a bunch of different factions in the WWE, which looks like that might happen this year, where a bunch of different factions are fighting for the control of WWE. You could have a faction of like Seth, Braun, Paul, and probably Drew joins that, but then there's like a breakup of it, and Drew either joins another faction or Braun Breaker joins another faction. But you'll have like a bloodline faction then you'll have like The Rock and John Cena and Travis Scott. And you could have Randy Orton end up joining, John Cena's group at one point, or you could have Drew McIntyre join John Cena's group at one point. You might have like a bloodline face group with like Sami Zayn and the Usos, and like the point I'm getting at is whether or not Drew and Braun are in the same faction throughout the year when all these different factions are colliding, they could have a breakup if they are in the same group before WrestleMania, and that leads to their championship match, or you could have them in opposing factions and you can have that storyline come to a clash at WrestleMania with Drew defending the title against Braun Breaker. Regardless of what you do, I think this will be a great WWE Championship match. I think Drew McIntyre would be a legitimate champion for Braun Breaker to face and challenge for his first championship, and this is my WWE Championship match for WrestleMania 42. So we talked about this as one of the matches to build around, and I think that you could have these 4 women involved in the CM Punk and Logan Paul feud. Obviously, Liv and Raquel would be, Team Logan, and AJ would obviously be Team her husband, CM Punk, and then Roxanne Perez could get involved. And, them being involved in that match could make the storyline of this match more vital, right? Like, it would elevate the storyline of this match, because this match on its own, it's not really a match you can build as like a match to build the card around. But I do think like Liv Morgan, she's too big of a star to be in a simple tag team title match at WrestleMania next year. But if you involve a legend like AJ Lee and a huge up-and-comer like Roxanne Perez, and you make this match part of the storyline of CM Punk and Logan Paul in like creative enough ways, this could be a big time match as long as it has the proper storyline behind it. But anyways, I think Roxanne Perez is kind of like a young mini AJ Lee, so her teaming up with AJ Lee would be kind of iconic, and AJ Lee and Roxanne Perez could win the tag team titles, and then Roxanne can spend 6 months to a year learning from AJ Lee, and then maybe at WrestleMania 43 they have a match themselves. But this is a match that I would say, storyline wise, involve them with the Logan Paul CM Punk match, and then have this be a tag team title match at WrestleMania 42. My main event of WrestleMania Saturday is Tiffany Stratton defending the undisputed Women's World Championship against Jade Cargill. I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I hope that the two women's world titles are unified before WrestleMania next year and Tiffany walks in as the champion and Jade Cargill probably as the Women's Royal Rumble winner. And it would be really refreshing if one of the Royal Rumble winners actually main events one of the WrestleMania nights next year, because we always hear about how the winner of the Royal Rumble goes to the main event of WrestleMania, and yet both Royal Rumble winners from this year did not main event either night of WrestleMania, which was ridiculous. If you're going to have two nights of WrestleMania, at least one of them needs to have a Royal Rumble winner in the main event. And I think Jade Cargill will win the Women's Royal Rumble next year, and I think she'll challenge Tiffany Stratton for the WWE Women's Championship. And the seeds for this match and this feud are already being planted on WWE TV. They can even have a match or two before SummerSlam this year, but I think that they should ultimately collide at WrestleMania for the Women's World Championship after Jade Cargill wins the Royal Rumble. And this will be another chance of WWE to get the women in one of the main events of WrestleMania. It's been a few years now, and I think these two, by this point next year, will be ready for that, both in terms of what they'll be able to do in the ring, but just their star power in general, which I only see going up for both. So my main event of WrestleMania Saturday is Tiffany Stratton defending the Women's World Championship against Jade Cargill. So again, just like WrestleMania Saturday, I will have 8 matches on WrestleMania Sunday. Let's go with WrestleMania Sunday. My opening match of WrestleMania Sunday will be for the Intercontinental Championship, and I will have Ludwig Kaiser enter as the champion to defend against Sheamus. We all know the story of Sheamus never being able to win the WWE Intercontinental Championship. I hope that they don't pull the trigger on that before WrestleMania, because that is a WrestleMania moment waiting to happen. And I would make this extra juicy by having this match be, if Sheamus does not win the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, he must retire from professional wrestling forever. So that would make this match extra juicy. We know Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser can have good matches together, but to make this a WrestleMania worthy match, you have it be for the Intercontinental Championship, and if Sheamus does not win his first ever Intercontinental Championship, he must retire. That makes this match a WrestleMania worthy match. Then I have tables, ladders, and chairs for the World Tag Team Championships. And much like I hope they unify the two Women's World Championships, I hope they unify the Men's Tag Team Championships before WrestleMania next year. The WWE has too many championships, and two that I think should definitely be unified in this next wrestling year is the two Women's World titles. You only need one Women's World Champion, and the Men's Tag Team Champions. You only need one set of men's tag team champions. You don't need one for Raw and SmackDown. Just have one tag team champions, period, for the men. Anyways, and I hope that the New Day are the ones that become the undisputed WWE World Tag Team Champions. And it has been a while since we've had a tables, ladders, and chairs match for the tag team titles at WrestleMania. Tables, ladders, and chairs, tag team titles, WrestleMania. That almost automatically equals a fantastic match. And if you make this the tag teams in that tag team TLC match, the New Day, the Usos, Rey Fenix and Penta, and the Creed brothers, American Made, you're going to have an incredible match. A match that could compete for match of the weekend. But anyways, I have a TLC match for the hopefully undisputed tag team championships, the New Day, the Usos, Rey Fenix and Penta, and American-made the Creed brothers. Then I have a championship scramble match for the Women's United States Championship. And if you don't know what a championship scramble match is, go watch Unforgiven 2008, WWE Unforgiven 2008. They had 3 title matches defended under a championship scramble match at that year's event. And it's been a while since I've seen a championship scramble match. And my idea was, let's have 5 former world champions wrestle for the Women's United States title in a championship scramble match to really elevate that championship, especially after the 2 women's world titles are unified, in my idea. Well, let's have 5 world champions wrestle for the U.S. title in a championship scramble match. Nia Jax, Naomi, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and Io Sky. I think this would be an incredible match. And again, if you don't know what a championship scramble match is, just go look up and watch Unforgiven 2008. Then I have 2 of the biggest badasses in WWE, 2, just straight up wrestlers, 2 in your face wrestlers, just really slobber knocker of a match, as JR would call it. This would be a slobber knocker of a match. Gunther versus Jacob Fatu to find out, who runs the yard of WWE in this sense. Like, who is the best straight up punch for punch, kick for kick, slam for slam, hold for hold? Who's the best wrestler? You know what I mean? Who's the best wrestler in the men's division in WWE? Gunther versus Jacob Fatu. I think this would be a great match. Then I have Asuka versus Kairi Sane. And much like Sheamus earlier in the night, Asuka has the chance to do something she's never done before, and that is to win a match at WrestleMania. Asuka has never won a match at WrestleMania, which is a crime, by the way, but it presents a great opportunity. She missed WrestleMania this year, but before that, she has never won a match at WrestleMania. And if you bring these 2 back in time, you could have them be a tag team and be part of Damage Control, and be the Kabuki Warriors and all that. But then you can have some sort of breakup that leads to these 2 wrestling one-on-one at WrestleMania for the chance for Asuka to do something she's never done before, which is win a match at WrestleMania. And much like Sheamus, if she fails to do this, she must retire from WWE forever, and she will never ever get to wrestle at WrestleMania ever again. And she's facing an opponent that knows her better than anyone else in WWE. She's facing a tag team partner, someone she's held tag team championships with, someone she's been in a stable with for years, and someone who is younger than her and arguably better at this stage because Asuka's getting up there in age, younger and better at her than this, which makes this storyline really intriguing in the sense of, can Asuka get this done? And I would even cross-pollinate this with the Sheamus Ludwig Kaiser. And I would have matches where Kyrie and Ludwig Kaiser face off against Sheamus and Asuka in tag team matches on Raw and SmackDown and have the Ludwig Kaiser and Kairi Sane win. And I would have Asuka and Sheamus kind of have this, like, are we too old to do this thing? And, I would actually have at WrestleMania, because I had Sheamus in the opening match, and I'd have Sheamus win the Intercontinental Championship. And then later in the night before the Asuka Kairi Sane match, I would have Sheamus doing one of those backstage interviews, but during his interview, he sees Asuka, and she's panicking. She's lost some matches to Kairi Sane in tag team matches on Raw and SmackDown. She's been losing one-on-one matches. She's getting too old for this. She doesn't know she can do this. She's going to lose at WrestleMania again, but then Sheamus does the Lethal Weapon thing. If anyone's seen Lethal Weapon 4, Riggs and Murtaugh have that "we're not too old for this shit" moment. We're not too old for this shit. We're not too old for this shit. And you can literally have Sheamus pull from Lethal Weapon and hype Asuka up. We're not too old for this shit. We're not too old for this shit. And really get Asuka pumped, and then Asuka and Kairi Sane go have their match, and then Asuka finally gets her W at WrestleMania. I think this match would be great, but I think some people might be a little bit hesitant to have two, oh, if they lose, they must retire at WrestleMania storylines in the same weekend, let alone the same night. But if you cross-pollinate them and you actually have Sheamus and Asuka, you know, kind of fighting for one another throughout these feuds leading up to WrestleMania, and then Sheamus getting the W earlier in the night and then hyping Asuka up later, I think when Asuka wins, you can even have Sheamus and Asuka like celebrate together, like on the ramp or in the ring or whatever. And I think that would be a WrestleMania moment in itself. Sheamus finally winning the Intercontinental title and Asuka finally getting her WrestleMania victory. But anyways, Asuka versus Kairi Sane. If Asuka loses, she must retire from WWE forever and will never win at WrestleMania. But she'll win this time. The Rock versus Roman Reigns, we really don't need to talk about this all this much. This is a dream match that has been rumored for the last 3 WrestleManias and it never took place on any of them. I really feel that if it doesn't happen at WrestleMania 42, it's probably never happening because it's not just Rock that's getting older, it's Roman that's getting older too. Roman Reigns will be 40 at WrestleMania next year. And he's been wrestling for a long time, and people can make jokes about part-time schedule and blah, 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 but he's been wrestling a long time, and The Rock's in his 50s, and this is pretty much it. If this doesn't happen at WrestleMania next year, it's probably never happening, and that would be a crying shame. It would be a crying shame if that match never happens. So let's get it done while we can get it done. The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania next year. And it doesn't need to be the main event. The Rock versus Hulk Hogan was not the main event to WrestleMania 18. The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match against each other at WrestleMania was not the main event of WrestleMania 19. This match doesn't need to be the main event. It just needs to happen. In fact, if it's not the main event, it could really help elevate the other matches that are in the main event of being like, these matches are a big deal because they're main eventing over Rock and Roman. And that could backfire. I mean, Triple H versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 18 was not fantastic. Rock and Hogan should have main evented. However, Brock versus Kurt at WrestleMania 19 was great when Rock and Austin went on earlier. Brock's shooting star, notwithstanding, but Brock versus Kurt was great. And I think, what I do have as the main event of night 2 could be great. But the point is, Rock versus Roman doesn't need to be the main event. It just needs to happen. This is a match that I think could be really, really cool. Again, if the build-up is done properly and if the storyline is, hot heading into this match. Simple. Alexa Bliss joins the Wyatts. She joins alongside Uncle Howdy, and it's basically Uncle Howdy and Alexa Bliss running the Wyatts. I would have the two of them earn victories over Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, maybe even at SummerSlam. Like, Uncle Howdy faces Damian Priest at SummerSlam. Alexa Bliss faces Rhea Ripley at SummerSlam. They get victories over them, and the two of them must join the Wyatts. So Rhea and Damian Priest must join the Wyatts, and Rhea Ripley pretty much becomes, under Alexa Bliss's spell for the rest of the year, and Damian Priest comes under Uncle Howdy's spell for the rest of the year. And come WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest have a chance to fight for their souls, so to say. They have the chance to fight, to be released from the spell of the Wyatts. It's Damian Priest teaming up with Rhea Ripley to take on Alexa Bliss and Uncle Howdy, and if they win, they're released from their spells, they're released from the control, they get their souls back from the Wyatts. And it's kind of silly and goofy, but you know what? Wrestling is silly and goofy sometimes, and if they put the effort into this and they build this up properly, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley versus Alexa Bliss and Uncle Howdy could be one heck of a cool WrestleMania match. Which brings us to our main event, and I think it's a crying shame what happened to CM Punk at WrestleMania this year. I think they pretty much ruined his WrestleMania main event moment with what they did, but And I mean just by the match taking place in general, not like how the match played out on the night of. I think that triple threat match should have never been the main event of WrestleMania. But if you want to hear me talk about that, you can watch my WrestleMania 41 sucks video. It was a video I released before WrestleMania 41 even happens. You can just click on my channel and watch it. And I go on a pretty big rant as to why that match being the main event was a stupid idea. And in hindsight, after the show, I think I was correct. I think it was a really bad idea that that was the main event. So I want to give CM Punk a proper main event, a real main event, a main event for a world championship in the main event of night 2, which is really the only main event, because the main event of night 1 is not a real main event, is it? Because the main event is the last match of the show. And WrestleMania does not end on Saturday, it ends on Sunday. So only the last match of WrestleMania Sunday is the main event. So let's give CM Punk a proper main event when he defends the World Heavyweight title against Logan Paul. Again, I think, I don't want to talk too much about like what they could do storyline wise. I talked a bit about having, the women's tag team title match cross-pollinated with this, and I think you could do something really cool with those 6 characters. CM Punk and Logan Paul doing, cinematic things outside of the wrestling ring and outside of the wrestling arena. You could shoot like literal short films of these two like feuding with each other like outside of the arena. You could do a lot of really creative things here to make this interesting. But they will have great chemistry, whether they're wrestling or whether they're acting in some sort of cinematic thing, or whether they're just standing in the ring with microphones. They're gonna have great chemistry. This will be a real main event for CM Punk. And in some ways it pains me to say this, but in other ways it doesn't really, because he's kind of proven that he deserves this, and I do think at WrestleMania next year it will be time to give Logan Paul a world championship. You need to cash in on his star power, and enough of him wrestling people like LA Knight and AJ Styles and people like that. It's time for him to be in a true main event spot against a true main eventer with the world championship on the line. And I do think it's time to capitalize on his popularity, but also capitalize on the fact that Logan Paul's actually pretty good at this. And you know what? I think WrestleMania 42, it will be time to give him the world championship. I would have Logan Paul beat CM Punk for the World Heavyweight title in my main event of WrestleMania 42. Thank you so much for watching.